Hello retro fans! I have received something from the Czech Republic and I'm very happy that I got this because I missed the first batch and now I got this package from Martin, and in this video we will have a look what's going to be inside, and then we will have a very first-hand impression, and we'll see how this is going to work. But short interruption and then we continue. And here we go. So as I said, I have received this from the Czech Republic, from Martin, and I'm very excited because this is the brand new SID replacement, call it ARM2SID, and that's the next step, the next evolution of the already known ARMSID, which you can see already here on the board, and it went already through a second iteration. This is the second version, this is the first version, and now we're going to have the third version. And I have to say a very big thank you to Martin, because this episode is partly sponsored by ARM2SID, because I got one sample for testing and for making a video, and there's a very big thank you for this whole thing. And as you can see, we have a couple of different parts, including some kind of a quick installation guide, which is available in electronic form as well. And I'm going and let's say I just throw them onto this MK2 board and see where we're going to end up. And I have prepared a couple of things already. So I went to the ARM2SID page, and we can have a short look at it. Looks like this. So this is the installation guide, which I have showed you as a paper version. So this is available in electronic version as well. And there is going to be some additional files as well. This is basically the order page, and here we have a couple of downloads, including some examples, and I have already downloaded them to my USB stick so that we can jump and use this Pi 1541 and go and load the files from it. So as I said, I have received basically two versions, and let's have a look at this. And this is basically the single version, which can be used as a stereo SID. If we're going to use those, I just had them in my hand a second ago, those wires, and those wires are required to feed additional addresses into the SID, into the ARM2SID. Let's stick to this, and this is pretty similar to the other stereo dual twin SID solutions I have presented in former videos, and you can have a look how this is all kind of connected to each other. So we need additional addresses in order to play more than one SID, more than 3 voices, and the purpose of those wires and this connector is to provide the information required to the ARM2SID. And the next thing is going to be this box, and as you can see, now we got two kind of let's call it PCBs or something like this. So we got the very same ARM2SID as well, so I pretty much assume that this is the very same thing, but now we got kind of an let's call it adapter, and this can be used together with the cable which is attached to the back of this box to get the information I was talking about just a second ago, for which we need the cable, from the second socket and this is very, very similar to this FPGA SID adapter I have built for twin socket boards. And this is a very comfortable solution to get access to the required signals, because they are already there if you have two sockets, and this is very nice. And this is the main purpose for having this small cable with this kind of let's say very simple adapter. So it's just getting some signals from the second socket, feeds those signals to the first ARM2SID, and then we should end up with a stereo SID solution. And we're going to test this right now. As you can see, I have already prepared my MK2 board because I have ordered the MK2 version of this ARM2SID, and I hope everything is going to work the way I expect this. I just briefly flick over to the window where we can see what I'm talking about, and this is basically exactly in this part here, ARM2SID with the second socket for C64 reloaded MK2. So that's basically this section. And this is a special edition of the previous version, so it's talking about this one, which contains additional resistors to move the external input offset on both sockets that allows the C64 reloaded MK2 to auto-detect ARM2SID as 8580. And the purpose of this is basically, if we're going to switch over to our main view, and if we're going to start the C64 board, we will have a very small LED blinking here at the left hand corner, and this is telling us that something is wrong with our configuration. And I have connected the MK2 via USB to my laptop, and I can use a terminal program over there, and this terminal program is telling me that my SID configuration is probably wrong, or there's something broken or whatever. So, and nevertheless, everything is working fine because the ARM2SID is not required to have a different voltage settings compared to the 8580, and it has no need for external filter capacitors, and therefore this is working fine. But we still got this kind of annoying blinking light, and I hope with this version this is going to be gone, and we will have some very nice stereo sound coming out of this ARM2SID. And well, too much text, let's just do it. So we switch off the board, and then we remove those two ARMSIDs over here. And since men do not read instructions, I'm just going and install them the way I think I have to install them. So basically SID1 on this socket, SID2 on the other, and then we're going to use this little cable, and we simply just plug this into our connectors, and I think we can't do anything wrong with it. Even if we change this, it's going to be the same, but let's do it in this way. And I think we have to put this in this direction. So if we add this to this and this and this, and it's going to be a little bit complicated, but I think that's going to work. So let's start with it and add this to our connectors. Nope, it's a bit tight. Yes, here we go. And we're going to do the same on this side. And with some luck, perhaps it's not going to blow up, hopefully. So, fits nice and almost perfect. And now, fingers crossed, let's see what's going to happen. There's no blinking LED. That's a good sign. So, or a bad sign perhaps. Everything's dead right now, I don't know. But we can check this quite easily and see if we have a picture. Yes, and the C64 is working. And in order to continue with our testing, let's move on and see whether we can have some files loaded from our Pi 1541. I just forgot to insert my SD card, and so it's not going to start. But this will be fixed in a second. Here we go. And oh, my Zoom is a little bit tight today, so I have to put this into a different position so that we can see something. And there should be a folder called ARM2SID. Here it is. And there are a couple of files inside already. And we're going to have a look at them right now and see in which order we have to start something. So as you can see, we got a PRG called A2SID 35.prg, A2SID 45b.prg, and they are huge. So I may have to put them into a disk image so that we can benefit from loading them with the help of some floppy speeder, because that's basically one weak point of the JiffyDOS, that we do not benefit from the speeder right now since it's not in a disk image. So I should have prepared something to kind of bridge the gap, but well, anyway, let's have a look at the quick installation guide. Thank you for your purchase. What I haven't talked about yet is that the ARM2SID is not just offering stereo SID emulation, it is offering the so-called FM synthesis, FM sound expander, OPL FM synthesis compatible with FM sound expander. And this is probably something, if you were in DOS gaming in the, let's say, mid-late 90s or something like this, you may remember that the first games that came out sounded pretty, let's say, awful compared to, let's say, the Amiga, for example. But later on, I think it started with the first release of Lemming or something like this. We got some very nice sounding so-called OPL synthesis. And later on with those famous sound cards like the Sound Blaster AWE32 and the GUS, for example, we had a chance to load, for this time I mean, huge sound banks into those sound cards to have a much better general MIDI sound. And this is basically where this has some origin in, and there are some demos available, as we can see on our disk directory, and we're going to check them as well. And I'm very excited to see how this is going to sound like. But first, let's start this one. And we got a message, ARM2SID. I really have to kind of practice this a little bit, that the name is a little bit different now. ARM2SID found at D400, firmware version, emulated device, not in bootloader, continue, yes. Erasing app header, done, resetting, continue, yes, continue, yes. So this is basically the update program, which is perhaps not really necessary because they should come with the latest firmware already. But just to be on the safe side, let's go through this, and that's not taking so long. And yeah, Then let's have a look at our manual again. Perhaps there's some kind of description what those programs are all about. There's some installation guide. How we have to install this in the different types of C64/C128. And then we got a single socket wired software configuration, firmware update, and well, yeah, update done. Okay, so we have performed an update. Whether it was useful or not, I have no idea. And we may have to reset our machine in order to load hopefully some kind of either configuration or test program. And this is perhaps call it test C31 PRG. Probably it's this one. Let's see. And it's indeed smaller, so it's hopefully working a little bit faster. And I may have to have a look at my configuration of my C64 MK2 board. And we have to set this to stereo mode. And let's see, more than one ARMSID found. That's a very good sign. ARM2SID left channel found at, we can read it, at D400, ARMSID found at D420, so everything's fine. Press 1 or 2 to choose one. So, oops, a lot of information. Left channel found at firmware revision emulated, potentiometers X and Y. Now we can set this the emulation mode, we can save, we can go to extended menu, we can have address mapping configuration, and we can restart the tester. So let's have a look at the extended menu. That's very same. We are already aware of the, let's call it standard ARMSID. So we can configure the filter configuration for either 6581 or 8580 emulation. And this is very, very nice, especially for the 6581. I found that this is indeed important if you want to play some tunes from Rob Hubbard, for example. And those tunes are very sensitive to the correct filter settings. Light Force is one major example. You may miss some voices, or they are not filtered at all, so it's really, really important to have the chance to configure your filter. And that's probably nothing we're going to do for today, so let's just keep it as it is. And then we have the address mapping configuration. Let's have a look at this one. Pin connections wire, and SID left, SID right, SID right, SID left, emulation mode, SID, SID FX booth. So downmix to mono off. Let's start it simple and see whether we can have some stereo SID sound already. So we may have to jump out with Q, and then perhaps we have to reset our machine again. And then let's load something that plays at least on 2 SIDs. And there's even a 3 SID example, Element Hi-Fi Sky, Sound Expand. That's going to be the FM synthesis. And FM Jam Demo, Game of Thrones, So let's go for the Element thingy and see how this is going to sound. It's a little bit bigger than the configuration file, so we may have to wait a few seconds. I really have to put them into a D81 image so that I got everything in one place and benefit from the floppy speeder provided by Jiffy DOS. And well, as I said at the very beginning, this is just a kind of first impression out of the box experience, and I will go through a couple of let's say in-depth testing of those ARM2SID replacement thingy, and we'll compare this for example with the FPGA SID as a first on market stereo SID replacement version. And I will talk about how to install this on the standard C64, what's going to be the benefits of using this solution compared to other solutions. But that's probably too much for this evening, and just want to have one small experience. And we have some sound already. So I think this sounds already pretty nice, but not very stereo-ish to me. So let's see whether we can load a different file and see if this is perhaps... Oops, pressed a couple of keys. Oops, clumsy finger. So then let's go for this Game of Thrones. It's a disc, that's a good thing. So we just may have to go down and mount this. And then we can have a look at the directory. And we have set it to the correct address, I think. So let's load this and see. Well, we got some stereo sound right now. So it thinks we do not have a stereo SID at D420, but I thought I configured it the right way. So let's have a look at my stereo configuration. Yes, it should be. It should be the way. But it's not loading as a stereo file. Let's give it a try again. Ah, I messed it up. No, It thinks there is no second SID at D420, and this is indeed a bit strange, so perhaps I have done something wrong. So let's have a look at the manual. Perhaps we can figure out what's going to be a solution to our situation. Orientation, dual socket configuration, mixed SID-FX, SID-to-SID or dual SID boards such as Ultimate 64, install ARM2SID in the primary socket, SID2 in the secondary socket. So this is exactly what I've done. Primary and secondary socket. Configure ARM2SID with the provided ARMSID tester utility. Started, choose the 400 SID, select M for address mapping configuration, select pin connection socket. Then choose what to play in the left and the right socket. If your socket supports DFXX addressing, you can use SFXFM2. So I thought we did this, but just to be sure, let's have a look. Since this is not going to play any music, then we may have to have a look at our configuration utility again. I thought I left my disk image. That's a bit strange. Then once again. Not again, not again. So, and we should load ARMSID tester. And this was the small program here, I think. ARMSID found at D420. So everything looks good so far. Then let's jump into the configuration. Upgrade firmware to version 2.0 and newer for new features. I thought we updated the firmware already. And probably this is... Oops. Now it's gone. No. I did it. Pressed the wrong key. I think it makes sense in some context because we tried to configure the SID2 adapter and this has basically no firmware. But let's jump back to the first thing and perhaps we have done something wrong. Address mapping configuration. So SID left, SID right. Emulation mode, SID. Down mix to mono, no. Wire socket. We should set this to socket. Okay, here we go. And how are we going to move over to SID2 now? Then choose what to play in the left and the right socket. Here we go. SID left, SID right. So, SID left, SID right, SID left, none. Okay. Emulation mode, SID, down mix to mono, safe. Permanently. Saving to flash. Sounds promising. ARMSID not found. Okay. So, then let's test the Game of Thrones demo again. And fingers crossed, we'll hopefully find our second SID. Yes, it looks good. So, very nice, very nice. I'm really impressed. So, after understanding how we have to configure this whole thing, it works now really good. And I actually can't say whether it sounds fantastic or not. I haven't listened to this demo that much, since I'm absolutely no Game of Thrones fan at all. But that's a whole different story. And but basically, as we can hear, this stereo, I think it sounds fantastic so far, and I will compare this to other stereo SID solutions, and then we can have kind of a one-on-one and see which sounds the best. But the next thing I'm really looking forward to is testing this FM SFX mode. So, and in order to do so, we have to jump back into our file directory, load. If I ever going to figure out what I'm doing when this is going to happen, this would be really cool. Not run, list. So. I think the time required to create a disk image would really sacrifice the time we spent for waiting already. So, and we want to configure ARMSID1, and we go to mapping, and we want to have everything. And let's have a look. We got no more chances to have stereo SID as well as SFX. So what happens if we set it to SFX? So we SFX, we just got this, and now we got stereo, and now we got mono SID and SFX. So I assume this is going to be the way we have to do this right now. Saving to run. Quit. Go to our directory again. It must be some kind of weird shift something combination. And probably now our configuration is lost. Should have saved this permanently. But we will test this. Perhaps it's going to work. Let's see. Nope. My whole picture's screwed. What happened? Quick fix. Sound expander. FM Jam demo. Let's start with this one. I think the sound expander needs some kind of input or something like this. I'm actually not sure whether we can figure out how this is going to work within the next minutes. So I prefer to have a kind of out-of-the-box working demo. Okay, so it looks like our configuration hasn't worked, so we may have to step out of this program again, load our configuration, set it to SFX, save it permanently, and test this again. Device not present error. Really? Well, I've typed. Strange. SFX. So it thinks it is going to be okay. So why it hasn't detected? So maybe we have to set the second socket to DFXX addressing, which is stated in the manual. I'm going to switch over quite quickly. I can show you this. Yep. If your socket supports DFXX addressing, you can use SFX FM2. So I have to configure my reloaded board that we run the second SID at a different address. And this is indeed strange because the reloaded isn't supporting DF00 on the second socket. So that's probably not going to work. And this is indeed a bit well sad. I haven't expected to trap into this pitfall so far. And it looks like this is just going to work if we're going to use the soldered version, or if we're going to use a different stereo SID board. And this is probably going to take a little bit longer than I have planned for this episode. So how are we going to proceed now? I have to come up with something fast, or I have to have a short interruption, prepare something, and then we continue. Anyway, what's going to be a good plan right now? So we need access to DF00, which is on our expansion port. And I don't want to start some extensive soldering session right now. We can have a down mix, we have the address bits, read write. So this is going to be a little bit longer to get the addresses from there. And but it's really a bit strange that this is not working with the reloaded MK2 out of the box. I wasn't aware of this missing DF00 so far, but it looks like there's basically no workaround. Or perhaps there is one thing we can try. If we're going to configure the first one as SFX, if we set this to SFX and set this to wire, and we set. I'm still struggling a little bit with the configuration. So now we have no access to SID1 any longer. If we set this to wire, then we can't do this either. So SFX seems to be stick to DF00. And there's actually no way to access the other configuration screens. No. So it looks like we are stuck a little bit with the FM synthesis. So I probably have to come up with something else in order to test this. And then we may have some kind of second part of the video. So as you can probably hear, it is working now, and I had to do some kind of let's say a quick wiring. So I basically went for the wired version, so I haven't used this SID2 adapter right now because the MK2 is not providing DF00 over this socket, and I did basically nothing else than connecting the read-write to pin 5 IO2, or well, yes, the IO2 pin 10 from the wiring connector, and I have used the first wire to feed the audio signal back into the second socket so that I got a stereo signal on my output of my reloaded MK2. And this is basically working quite fine, and the other 3 wires I just left blank, not connected to anything else, because for our sound effects demo it is not required. So, and as you can hear, it is working right now, and I think it kind of sounds fantastic. It's probably nothing you expect from a standard C64, but basically it is indeed amazing that this is working on a C64. And I will go through a couple of, let's say, demos. I mean, there are not that much, I guess, and see what we can use this FM synthesis for. And I'm going to use this sound expander program as well to see what we are capable of with this ARM2SID solution. So basically, and that's the end of the video already, and I'm sorry for the short interruption, and I really had to kind of reconfigure, I really had to test this. So basically I'm really happy with the solution so far. It is a very nice thing. I have to say it's very comfortable to install if you have a twin socket solution already. So like the MK2, like the Ultimate 64, or like the MixSID or the SID2SID adapter. So this is basically a very nice replacement for original SIDs. And if you consider, I mean, you can achieve almost the very same except for the FM synthesis if you use 2 standard ARMSIDs. We really have to keep in mind that the price of this solution is indeed lower than getting 2 of the ARMSIDs. And therefore it is indeed a very interesting option, especially if you are not happy with the ALDI-SIDs, for example, on the Ultimate 64. If you really want to have a, let's say, more advanced emulation of SID sounds, I'm not saying the ALTI-SIDs are bad, but we really have to admit that the ARMSID and the FPGA SID emulation level is indeed much higher right now. Then this is probably a very interesting thing to go, and I think especially this version, which is very, very easy to install, so it's not required to have any deeper knowledge of how this all works, and really no soldering. Get it out of the box, put it on your sockets, and it's kind of working right out of the box if you have read the manual and if you know how to configure this, and therefore it is a very, very comfortable solution. As I said, I'm going to have some more testing. I'm going to compare this against the FPGA SID, and perhaps I'm going to create a couple of examples how this sounds in comparison with, for example, the ALTI-SID, and perhaps some original SIDs as well. But this is going to be a little bit more, well, it requires a little bit more preparation, and therefore I really have to do my homework before I go to present this to you. And well, last but not least, thank you very much, Martin, for sending me the example thing and for letting me test the MK2 version especially. I'm really happy that we found something that's working on the MK2 without presenting an error LED all the time. And yeah, as usual, thank you very much for watching as well. And if you have any questions, if you want me to test something especially mentioned, then feel free to use the comment section. I will add as much links as I can remember I have talked about in the description section as well. And then, well, see you for the next video. Bye bye.